The night was cold, and the ruins of the old colony lay in silence. The fire from broken ships still burned in the distance, painting the dark sky with red smoke. The war had ended here only hours ago, but the battlefield still smelled of metal, ash, and blood. Sergeant Daniel Ward moved carefully through the broken streets. His boots crushed pieces of glass and stone, but he tried to stay quiet. He knew patrol drones were still searching. One sound, one wrong step, and he could be caught. He was tired, his face dirty, his arm bleeding from a cut he had not treated. He wanted to go back to base, but something kept him walking deeper into the ruins. Something he could not explain, and then he heard it, a sound so soft it could have been the wind. But it was not the wind. It was a voice, a whisper. "Please, stay." Daniel froze. His heart jumped. He quickly raised his rifle, scanning the shadows. "Who's there?" he whispered. His voice was sharp, but inside he felt something strange. The voice was too small, too weak to belong to a soldier. He took a slow step forward. There, under a broken wall in the corner of a destroyed home, he saw movement. A pair of eyes looked at him. Bright, too bright for a human. Daniel pointed his weapon. "Come out." The eyes blinked. Then, slowly, a small figure crawled from the dark. It was a child. Not human, skin pale, almost silver in the moonlight. Hair thin and white. The child's arms were shaking, holding a torn blanket close. Its face was dirty, and tears had left marks on the cheeks. Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. His training screamed at him, "Enemy life form, dangerous, do not trust." But then the child spoke, a voice so broken, so filled with sorrow, it cut deeper than any blade. "Can I please stay with you? My mother died today." Daniel lowered his weapon a little. He stared at the small creature, unsure what to do. This was impossible. This was the enemy. The war had taken thousands of human lives because of them. And yet, this child was alone, trembling, with nothing but fear in its eyes. "Where's your father?" Daniel asked, his tone hard, but inside he felt the weight of the question. The child shook its head slowly. "Gone." Daniel looked around. The ruins were empty. No sound of footsteps, no voices. Only this one fragile being in the middle of death and silence. His chest grew tight. He remembered his own daughter. She had been the same age before the war took her away. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push away the memory. But the face of his little girl returned, mixing with the alien child before him. The boy, or maybe girl, Daniel could not even tell, took one small step forward. "Please, don't leave me." "I have no one." Daniel felt anger. Anger at the war. Anger at the soldiers who had burned this place. Anger at himself for even thinking of helping the enemy, but he could not walk away. He lowered his rifle fully. "You can't stay here. It's not safe." The child's lips trembled. "Then take me, please." Daniel's breath grew heavy. Every instinct told him this was a trap. Maybe the aliens had left the child here to fool him. Maybe the child was trained to spy. Maybe bringing it along would destroy him. And yet, the child's voice was not the voice of an enemy. It was the voice of a child who had lost everything. He looked at the broken houses, the shattered toys on the ground, the burned walls still holding pieces of family pictures. This was not a military base. This was once a home. And war had taken it all. Daniel finally nodded. "Stay close, no sound. Understand?" The child's eyes filled with tears, but also with something Daniel had not expected. Hope. For the first time in hours, the child's lips formed a tiny smile. Daniel motioned with his hand. "Follow me." The two of them moved carefully through the ruins, step by step, avoiding the broken roads where drones might scan. The night grew darker, the wind colder. Behind them, far in the distance, Daniel heard the hum of engines. The patrol was getting closer. He stopped, listening. His hand went to the child's shoulder, pushing him gently behind cover. The child held his arm tight. Daniel whispered, "Don't move." Bright lights cut through the smoke ahead. Machines, human soldiers on patrol, searching. If they saw him with the child, there would be no mercy. Daniel's heart beat faster. He had made his choice. But now he realized the cost. If the patrol found them, it would mean prison. Or worse. The child's small hand shook as it held Daniel's sleeve. The human soldier, once ready to kill, now stood frozen between duty and compassion. The searchlight grew brighter. The sound of boots on broken stone came closer. Daniel raised his rifle again. but this time not against the child. The patrol was almost there, and then, just as the light swept across their hiding place, the child gripped his hand tightly and whispered one word: "Run." The night was long, but somehow they escaped the patrol. Daniel had run with the child through broken streets, turning corner after corner, hiding in shadows until the searchlights faded. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but he did not stop. When the silence finally returned, he led the child to an old shelter. It was a small storage room beneath the ruins of a factory. The metal door was half broken, the smell of oil and dust thick inside. But at least it was hidden. At least it was safe. Daniel closed the door and sat down against the wall, breathing hard. The child sat in the corner, hugging the torn blanket again. The two looked at each other for a long moment. Neither spoke. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He was still unsure. Why was he helping this child? Why was he risking everything? He should have left the creature behind. But when he looked at the small face, pale and fragile, he knew the answer. He could not. The child broke the silence first. "Thank you," Daniel frowned. "Don't thank me yet. If anyone finds us, we're both dead." The child lowered its head, silent again. Daniel sighed. He searched his pack and pulled out a ration bar. It was his last one. He hesitated before tossing it across the floor. "Eat." The child picked it up with shaky hands. For a second, Daniel thought the child might not understand how to open it, but then small fingers tore the package. The child ate quickly, almost too quickly, like someone who had not eaten for days. Daniel watched, his expression unreadable. When the child finished, it whispered, "My name is Kira." Daniel looked at him. No, her. He realized now the child was a girl. Small, thin eyes glowing faintly in the dark like two tiny stars. "Kira," Daniel repeated. "I'm Daniel." She nodded slowly, as if sealing a secret between them. The hours passed in silence. Daniel tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he heard footsteps outside, or the hum of drones in the distance. Kira stayed awake too, watching him with wide eyes. She did not speak much, but her gaze was steady. It was strange. Daniel had fought her kind for years. He had seen them kill his comrades. He had seen their ships burn human cities. And yet here she was, small, scared, and completely dependent on him. Something inside Daniel shifted. At dawn, he stood and checked his weapon. The child stirred. "Stay here," Daniel said. "I'll check outside." Kira's eyes widened. "No, don't leave me." Daniel paused. The words were soft, almost broken. He saw her hands shake as she clutched the blanket tighter. He sighed. "Fine, but stay quiet." They left the shelter together. The streets were gray with morning fog. Smoke rose in the distance where the city still burned. No sign of patrols. Not yet. Daniel led her through the ruins, searching for safer ground. They passed broken cars, shattered windows, walls covered with ash. Once they heard voices, and Daniel pushed Kira down behind a wall until the sound faded. Hours later, when they returned to the shelter, Daniel finally spoke. "You shouldn't trust me." Kira tilted her head. "Why?" "Because humans and your people. We're at war. I've killed your kind before." His voice was hard, but there was regret hidden inside. Kira looked down, then whispered, "And my people killed yours." Silence stretched between them. For the first time, they shared the same pain. Both had lost families. Both had been victims of a war they never chose. Daniel sat down and pulled out a small photo from his pocket. It was old, edges torn, but the image still clear. A woman and a little girl smiling. His wife, his daughter. Before the war, Kira leaned closer. "Is that your family?" Daniel's jaw tightened. It was. Her eyes softened. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Daniel did not answer. He simply put the photo away and stared at the floor. That night they stayed in silence again. But it was different from before. Not the silence of strangers. The silence of two broken souls trying to understand each other. Then, just before sleep took them, there came a sound. A knock. Daniel froze. The knock was sharp, heavy, metallic. Not a random sound. Someone was at the door. Kira's eyes widened in fear. Daniel raised his rifle slowly, moving toward the door. His heart pounded. Who could it be? Another knock, louder this time. A voice followed. Human, firm, commanding. "Open up. Military patrol. This area is under inspection." Daniel's blood ran cold. Kira clutched his arm, trembling. Her glowing eyes begged him not to answer. The voice outside repeated, harsher this time. "Open the door or we break it down." Daniel stood still, weapon ready, torn between two choices. If he opened the door, they would see Kira. If he refused, they would break in anyway. His grip on the rifle tightened. The silence inside grew heavier. And then, the door handle began to turn. The door rattled. The sound echoed through the small shelter like thunder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Last warning. The soldier outside shouted, "Open this door!" Daniel's heart raced. His finger rested on the trigger of his rifle. He glanced at Kira. Her glowing eyes were wide with fear. She clung to his arm, shaking her head quickly, begging without words. If they found her, it was over. They would call her an enemy spy, and Daniel would be executed for hiding her. He had two choices: obey his duty or protect the child. The handle jerked again. Metal screeched. They were about to break in. Daniel whispered fast, "Stay behind me. Don't make a sound." Kira nodded, pressing herself against the wall, trying to vanish into the shadows. The door burst open. Two soldiers stepped inside, rifles raised, armor glowing faintly in the gray light. Their helmets hid their faces, but Daniel recognized the markings. "His own unit, Sergeant Ward," one of them barked. "Why is this door locked?" "You hiding something?" Daniel forced his breath to slow. He lowered his weapon just a little, enough to look calm. "I was resting. Patrols were heavy last night. I needed cover." The soldier scanned the small room with cold eyes. His helmet sensors glowed as they swept the shadows. Daniel's heart pounded louder with each second. He stood in front of Kira's hiding spot, his body blocking their view. The second soldier stepped closer. "What's that behind you?" Daniel's hand twitched near his rifle. "Just rubble." The soldier tilted his head. For a moment, silence ruled. Only the hum of their scanners filled the room. Then from the corner, a small sound slipped out. A cough. Kira had covered her mouth too late. The first soldier froze. His weapon lifted higher. What was that? Daniel's chest tightened. His mind raced. He had seconds to act. He forced a laugh. "Rats, this place is full of them." The soldiers exchanged a look. One did not seem convinced. He stepped forward, rifle aimed at the corner. Daniel reacted without thinking. He shifted, blocking the soldier's path. "I said it's just rats." "You calling me a liar?" His voice was sharp now, angry, almost too angry. The soldier hesitated. "Relax, Ward, we're just doing our job." "Then do it outside," Daniel snapped. "This place is clear. No enemies here. Move on." The two soldiers studied him for a long moment. Daniel's finger twitched on his rifle, ready to fight if he had to. Finally, the first soldier muttered, "Fine, but you look tired. Ward, don't let fatigue get you killed." They turned and stepped out. The metal door slammed shut behind them. Daniel's shoulders sagged. His breath came fast and heavy. Kira crawled from the shadows, tears shining in her eyes. "You lied." "For me?" Daniel stared at her. His hands shook. He had just broken the most important rule of war. He had chosen her over his duty. "You almost gave us away," he whispered harshly, but his voice softened after a moment. "Next time. Be careful." Kira lowered her head. "I'm sorry." The silence stretched, heavy with what had just happened. Hours later, when the patrols moved far from the area, Daniel finally sat again, his back against the cold wall. His mind was not calm. He had crossed a line. If they suspected him, his own people would turn on him. But then Kira spoke, her small voice trembling but determined. "I know something," Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him with those bright eyes. "My people. They have a plan. A secret attack." Daniel froze. "What kind of attack?" Kira's hands twisted the blanket she held. "There will be another strike. Not here, a bigger city. More humans will die, soon." Daniel's blood ran cold. If she was telling the truth, thousands of lives were in danger. But how could he trust her? She was still the enemy. Maybe this was a trick. Maybe she was trained to tell lies. He leaned closer, his voice sharp. "How do you know this?" Kira hesitated. Then she whispered, "Because I heard them. Before the soldiers came, my people, they used me. They wanted me to stay alive so I could tell stories, so I could bring humans into traps. But I escaped." Daniel stared. Her words felt heavy, filled with pain and fear. Could a child really invent such a story? His chest grew tight. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to trust, but if he did, if he carried this secret, He would betray his own army. His mind turned like a storm. Report her, and the humans would learn of the attack. But then she would die. Hide her, and he would be branded a traitor. No choice was safe. Every path led to danger. He rubbed his face with both hands, frustration burning inside. Kira whispered again, her voice breaking. I don't want anyone else to die, please trust me. Daniel looked at her for a long time. She was just a child, small and fragile, caught in a war she never chose. And for the first time, he realized the truth. His choice was not between duty and betrayal. His choice was between war and humanity. Daniel lowered his head. If you're lying, you'll destroy me. Kira shook her head fiercely, tears falling. I'm not lying. The night grew colder around them. Outside, the distant sound of engines roared. War was moving again. Daniel gripped his rifle and stared into the darkness. His path was set, but it would cost him everything, and then a sharp beep echoed from his communicator. A new order. His commander's voice came through, harsh and clear. Ward, report at dawn. Bring anything unusual you found. Daniel's eyes widened. The army wanted answers, and he had Kira. The night was restless. Daniel sat in the dark shelter, the communicator still buzzing in his hand. The order was clear. Report at dawn, bring anything unusual. His commander's voice echoed in his mind. Kira slept lightly beside him, curled up with the torn blanket. Her breathing was soft, but her face twisted with uneasy dreams. Daniel watched her, his jaw tight. She was the unusual thing they wanted. He rubbed his forehead. If he obeyed, the army would take her away. They would interrogate her, maybe kill her. But if he refused, they would suspect him. And suspicion was deadly in wartime. The child stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dark. You didn't sleep, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. Couldn't. Kira sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her thin shoulders. It's because of me. He didn't answer. She looked down. I told you about the attack. I thought, maybe you'd trust me. Daniel's voice was low, heavy. Trust is dangerous. Trust gets people killed. Kira's small voice trembled. But if you don't believe me, more will die. Your cities, your families. Daniel's chest tightened. His hand went to the photo in his pocket, the one of his wife and daughter. He closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear his little girl's laugh. Then the memory twisted, turning to screams, fire, and silence. When he opened his eyes, Kira was watching him. I lost my family, she whispered. Just like you. My people said humans are monsters, but you gave me food. You protected me. You're not a monster. Her words cut deeper than any weapon. Daniel stood suddenly, pacing the room. If I tell them what you said, maybe they'll stop the attack. Maybe lives will be saved. Kira rose to her feet, panic in her voice. No, they won't believe you. They'll use me. They'll hurt me until I say what they want, and then they'll kill me anyway. He turned to her, anger flashing. So what do you want me to do? Betray my own people? Run and hide forever? Her eyes filled with tears. I just want someone to stay. The words silenced him. He stared at her, torn between duty and something deeper, something human. Finally, he exhaled slowly. If what you said is true, we can't stay here. We need proof. Evidence of this attack. Something my people can't ignore. Kira hesitated. Then she nodded. I know where they're gathering. The soldiers. The machines. I can take you. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You'd lead me there? She swallowed hard, fear in her glowing eyes. Yes, but it's dangerous. If they see me, they'll kill me too. I escaped them. They won't forgive that. Daniel gripped his rifle. Then we'll move carefully. At night. By dawn, they were already leaving the shelter. Smoke still rose from broken towers. The streets were empty, silent except for the distant hum of patrols. Daniel led the way, scanning every corner. Kira followed closely, her bare feet almost silent on the cracked ground. Hours passed. They climbed over ruins, crossed collapsed bridges, and slipped through tunnels filled with dripping water. Twice Daniel had to pull her down as drones flew overhead. Each time Kira's small hand clung tighter to his. Finally, as night fell again, they reached the edge of the city. Beyond the hills, faint lights glowed. Not human lights, alien. Kira pointed with a trembling hand. There, the camp. Daniel crouched, raising his scope. His breath caught. Dozens of ships stood in neat rows. Strange machines, taller than buildings, waited in silence. Hundreds of alien soldiers moved like shadows between the lights. Weapons glowed with faint energy. It was an army preparing for war. Kira whispered, "They'll move in 2 days. They'll strike your capital." Daniel lowered the scope, his mind racing. She was telling the truth. This was the evidence. But how could he get close enough to prove it? Kira touched his sleeve. "I can help. I know a way inside. A tunnel they use, but—" She hesitated, her voice shaking. "If we go there, I may not come back." Daniel stared at her. She was just a child, but she was ready to risk everything. His chest ached. He wanted to tell her no. He wanted to leave her somewhere safe, but there was no safe place anymore. "We'll go together," he said finally. Her eyes widened. "You'd risk that?" He nodded once. "I didn't save you just to let you die now." For a moment, silence. Then Kira gave a small smile. Fragile, but real. But before Daniel could say more, a sudden sound split the night. The whir of engines. The crunch of boots. Voices. Daniel turned quickly, scanning the shadows. Soldiers were moving in the dark, human soldiers. His own unit. The commander's voice rang out, sharp and cold. "Sergeant Ward, step forward. You've been ordered to report. You will hand over anything you found." Daniel's blood froze. Kira clutched his arm, her tiny fingers digging into his sleeve. The searchlight swept the ground, moving closer. Daniel realized the truth. They had followed him. They already suspected he had no time left, and in that moment, with soldiers closing in from behind and an alien army waiting ahead, Daniel knew his next choice would decide not only his fate, but the fate of 2 worlds. The voices drew closer. Searchlights cut across the broken ground, sweeping over the ruins like blades of white fire. Daniel pressed Kira down behind a pile of stone, his rifle ready, his breath sharp and heavy. "Sergeant Ward!" The commander's voice was fierce, echoing through the night. "We know you're here. Step forward." Kira's small hand clutched his sleeve. "They'll take me," she whispered. "They'll kill me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had sworn an oath to his army, to obey every order without question. But now that oath stood against the child beside him. The child who had trusted him, who had shown him the enemy's camp, who had whispered her fear in the silence of the night. He could feel his chest pound with every passing second. He had no more time. "Stay here," he whispered. Her glowing eyes widened. "No, don't leave me." "I won't," Daniel said firmly. "But I have to face them." He stood, his shadow rising into the beam of a searchlight. Instantly, rifles locked onto him. The air filled with the hum of charged weapons. "Sergeant Ward," the commander barked, stepping forward. His armor gleamed, his face cold and sharp. "You've ignored orders. You've gone missing from your patrol. What have you found?" Daniel forced his voice to stay steady. "Nothing unusual. Just ruins. No hostiles." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here so far from base?" Daniel's breath caught. He needed a lie. A good one. He could not let them discover Kira. "I thought I saw movement," he said. "Wasn't sure if it was enemy scouts. I followed the trail here, but it was nothing." The commander studied him in silence, then gave a cold smile. "You're lying." Daniel's grip tightened on his rifle. "Sir, do you think we don't know?" The commander cut him off. "Do you think we haven't been watching?" "You've been hiding something, and we'll find out what it is." Behind Daniel, Kira crouched low, trembling. Her small body shook as soldiers spread out, scanning the ground with their lights. Panic rose inside him. If they found her, it was over. The commander stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "Ward, if you're protecting the enemy, you'll hang as a traitor." The word cut through him like a blade. Traitor? Daniel had been a soldier all his life. He had followed every order, fought every battle, buried every comrade. His name was built on loyalty. But now, standing in the dark with a child behind him, he realized something he had never admitted before. Loyalty to war was not loyalty to humanity, and for the first time, Daniel chose. He raised his communicator slowly, his hand steady despite the storm inside. "Commander," he said, "I have intelligence. The enemy is preparing a strike, a massive one. They'll hit the capital in 2 days." The soldiers froze. Even the commander blinked in surprise. "Where did you get this information?" Daniel forced the lie. "Scouts left behind a data relay. I intercepted fragments. Enough to know their plan." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Daniel's chest tightened. He had no evidence, no data. Only Kira. But if he revealed her, she would be lost, so he gave them something else. He pointed east toward the alien camp hidden beyond the hills. The machines are there. The army is there. If you move now, you can see it with your own eyes. The commander stared at him, searching for cracks in his voice, for weakness. And why didn't you report this sooner? Daniel swallowed hard. I needed to be sure. The silence stretched. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons still aimed. Finally, the commander gave a short nod. Very well. We'll verify this. But if you're lying, Ward, I'll execute you myself. He gestured to his men. Sweep the area. Then we march east. Daniel's heart pounded. He had done it. He had turned their eyes away from Kira. For now. The soldiers spread out, scanning the ruins. Daniel kept his body rigid, forcing himself not to look behind. If his gaze betrayed Kira's hiding place, everything would end. Minutes crawled like hours. The soldiers found nothing. Clear, one reported. The commander turned back to Daniel. You'll guide us. At dawn we move. Daniel gave a sharp nod. Yes, sir. The soldiers withdrew, forming ranks outside the ruins. Their searchlights faded into the mist. When they were gone, Daniel exhaled sharply, his hands trembling for the first time. He turned back. Kira crawled from the shadows, her eyes wide with shock. You lied. For me. Daniel sank to one knee, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. They believe me for now, but if they find out the truth, if they find you, it's over. We have to move before dawn. We can't stay. Tears rolled down her face. Why would you risk everything? Your people will call you traitor. Daniel's voice was firm. Because I've already lost one child. I won't lose another. Kira's breath caught. For the first time, she leaned forward, wrapping her small arms around him. The embrace was weak, trembling, but it was real. Daniel froze, then slowly returned the embrace. For a brief moment in the middle of war and ruin, there was something like peace, but peace never lasts. A sudden crack split the night, a sound like metal breaking, like glass shattering. Daniel looked up sharply. The horizon glowed red, not from fire, from engines, alien ships. Dozens of them rising into the night sky. Moving fast, Kira's face went pale. They've started early, she whispered. The attack isn't in 2 days. It's now. Daniel's blood ran cold. He had lied to his commander. He had betrayed his people. And now, with the enemy already in motion, both sides were walking into disaster. The night sky burned with red light. Alien ships streaked across the clouds, leaving trails of fire. Their engines roared like thunder, shaking the ruins below. Daniel and Kira stood frozen on the hillside, watching in silence. The alien army was moving sooner than anyone had expected. Hundreds of war machines rolled forward. Soldiers poured from the ships like shadows given form. Kira's small hand gripped his tightly. Her glowing eyes reflected the fire. They're coming, she whispered. Daniel's jaw clenched. He had lied to his commander, told him the attack was in 2 days, but the truth was here now, burning in front of him, and it was too late to fix it. From behind, the sound of boots and voices grew louder. Human soldiers were marching toward the same battlefield, led by the commander. Both armies were moving straight into each other. Daniel pulled Kira back into the shadows. We can't be here when they clash, her voice trembled. Then where do we go? He scanned the hills. There was no safety, no escape. Both sides would destroy anything in their path. He knew the only way was to hide, to survive long enough for the fire to pass. Follow me, he said. They slipped into the ruins of an old tunnel system, broken and filled with the smell of rust and smoke. Rats scattered as their footsteps echoed softly in the dark. But even underground, safety was an illusion. The sound of engines rumbled above, and the ground shook as bombs struck the city. Dust fell from the ceiling with every impact. Kira pressed close to him. They'll find us, she whispered. Daniel looked down at her, his voice firm. Not if we stay quiet. Not if we stay together. They moved deeper through dripping pipes and broken walls, but soon a sharp hum filled the air. A red light flickered at the far end of the tunnel. A drone, it floated toward them, scanning with glowing sensors. Daniel pulled Kira behind a pillar. He raised his rifle, aiming carefully. His finger tightened on the trigger. One shot. The drone exploded in sparks. Its pieces clattered across the floor, but the damage was done. The sound echoed. The tunnel filled with alarms. They know, Daniel whispered. And then the ground shook harder. From the tunnel mouth, armored figures stormed in. Not aliens, humans, The commander's voice boomed. "Ward, drop your weapon." "Step away from the target!" Kira gasped, pulling back. "They mean me." Daniel's heart pounded. He turned, rifle still in hand, facing his own soldiers. Dozens of rifles aimed at him in the dim light. "Don't do this," the commander shouted. "Hand over the creature. You're a soldier, Ward. Obey your oath." Kira looked up at him, her small hands trembling. "You promised. You wouldn't leave me." Daniel's chest ached. He had once fought for duty, for honor. But now, duty and honor meant nothing. What mattered was the promise he had made to this child. He raised his weapon not at the soldiers, but at the ceiling above. With 3 sharp bursts, he fired into the old supports. The tunnel shook. Stone cracked. Dust poured down. "Run!" he shouted. He grabbed Kira's hand, dragging her down a side path as the ceiling collapsed behind them. Screams filled the air as soldiers scattered, trapped by falling stone. They ran, their footsteps pounding through the twisting tunnels. The roar of battle above grew louder, aliens and humans colliding in fire and steel. At last they stumbled into an old service chamber, the air damp and heavy. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Kira collapsed beside him, tears streaking her pale face. "You fought them. Your own people. For me." Daniel dropped his rifle to the ground, his hands trembling. "They would have killed you. I couldn't let that happen." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, then whispered, "You're not just a soldier anymore. You're my family now." The words struck him harder than any bullet. Family. He had lost his once, but here was a second chance offered in the middle of war. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then from above, the sound of metal drilling into stone echoed down. Alien voices shouted. More soldiers were coming, this time not human. Daniel's face hardened. Both sides were hunting them now. Neither saw a child, they saw a weapon, a tool, a danger. He picked up his rifle again. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me." Kira's eyes glowed brighter, but this time not with fear. With something deeper. Hope. The chamber shook as a blast ripped open the ceiling. Alien soldiers dropped in, their weapons sparking with light. Daniel stood tall, rifle raised, shielding the child with his body. He fired, each shot echoing like thunder. The aliens answered with blasts of energy that lit up the chamber walls. The fight was brutal. Sparks, smoke, screams. Daniel pushed forward, protecting Kira at every step, his body a wall between her and the enemy. But he was only one man. And there were too many. One blast struck his side. Pain tore through him, but he kept firing. Another hit his arm, forcing him to drop his spare clip. His vision blurred, his legs heavy. Kira cried out, trying to pull him back. "You'll die." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Not while you're still standing." At that moment, something changed. Kira's body trembled, her eyes burning brighter than ever before. She screamed, not in fear, but in power. A wave of light burst from her, slamming through the chamber. Alien soldiers flew back, their weapons shattering in their hands. The walls cracked, the ground shook. Daniel shielded his eyes, stunned. The child he had sworn to protect was no helpless refugee. She carried something inside her, something far greater. When the light faded, silence fell. The aliens lay scattered, unconscious or dead. The chamber smoked with heat. Kira fell to her knees, trembling. Her small body shook from the effort. Daniel dropped beside her, holding her up. What was that?" Her lips parted, her voice faint but certain. "It's what they feared. What they wanted to use me for. I'm not just a child. I'm a weapon." Daniel stared at her, blood dripping from his wounds, his heart racing. Above, the sounds of battle still raged. Humans and aliens killing each other. And now both sides would hunt her harder than ever before. He tightened his grip on her hand. "No," he whispered. "You're not a weapon. You're my daughter now." Kira's tears fell as she clung to him. But the moment of peace was broken by the sound of boots. Human boots pounding closer through the tunnels. The commander's voice echoed once more, colder than ever. "Ward. This ends tonight. Hand her over, or I'll put you both in the ground." Daniel's rifle shook in his bloody hands. His body was weak, but his eyes burned with fire. This would be his last stand. The tunnel shook with heavy boots. The commander's voice echoed again, sharp as a blade. "Ward, step aside. Give us the child and I'll let you live. Resist and you both die." Daniel's breath came in ragged bursts. His side burned from the energy blast. Blood soaked through his uniform, but his grip on the rifle did not loosen. Kira crouched behind him, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She pressed her small hands to his wound, but it did little to stop the bleeding. "You can't fight them all," she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I don't need to fight them all. Just long enough to protect you." The chamber's entrance exploded in sparks. Human soldiers stormed in, rifles raised, their lights cutting through the dust. The commander stepped forward, tall and cold, his weapon trained on Daniel. "You were a good soldier once," the commander said. "Don't throw that away for a creature that should never exist." Daniel's voice was steady, but his heart thundered. "She's not a creature. She's a child. And she's mine now," the commander sneered. "Then you die as a traitor." The chamber erupted in fire. Bullets and energy blasts filled the air. Daniel moved with desperate precision, firing shot after shot. He struck down the first wave, but the recoil tore at his wounded side. His vision blurred, but he kept standing. Kira clung to him, her tears mixing with dust. "Stop, please stop." Her voice broke through the storm of gunfire. For a moment, the soldiers hesitated, and in that breath of silence, Kira rose to her feet. Her eyes burned with pure light. The ground trembled as power surged from her small frame. Daniel turned, shielding her with his body. But the light swept through the chamber like a living storm. Weapons melted in the soldiers' hands. Helmets cracked. Men were thrown back against the walls. The commander himself staggered, his armor sparking. "Enough!" he roared. He raised his weapon, aiming not at Daniel but at Kira. Daniel saw it in an instant. He didn't think. He moved, the shot fired. A burning bolt of energy sliced through the air, and Daniel stepped into its path. The impact slammed into his chest. Pain tore through him. His legs buckled. He fell to his knees, the rifle clattering from his hands. "Daniel!" Kira screamed, running to his side. She pressed her hands against the wound, light spilling from her palms, but it was no use. The wound was too deep. Daniel's breath came shallow now. His vision dimmed, but he forced his eyes to meet hers. "Don't!" "Stop fighting. You're stronger than they'll ever know." Kira's tears fell on his face. "I don't want to be strong. I just want you." Behind them, the commander rose, weapon still glowing. "Then you'll die with him." Kira turned, her grief turning to fury. Her body shook, her eyes blazing. She screamed, and the chamber exploded with light once more. The soldiers were thrown like rag dolls. The commander's armor cracked, splitting under the force. His weapon shattered in his hand. With a final roar, he was flung into the darkness, silent forever. The chamber collapsed in smoke and rubble. When the light faded, only silence remained. Kira knelt beside Daniel, her small hands trembling. His breaths were shallow, fading. She shook him, desperate. "Don't leave me, please." "Not you too." Daniel's lips curved in the faintest smile. His voice was weak but steady. "I told you." "I wouldn't." Her tears shone as she held him close. "You're all I have." He raised a trembling hand, brushing her cheek. His voice was almost a whisper. "No, you have more. You have a future, a life. You're not a weapon, Kira. You're my daughter." Her small hand gripped his tightly. "Then stay. Stay with me." His eyes closed for a moment, then opened again, filled with something soft, something human. "I can't promise forever, not like this. But listen to me." He pulled her closer, his voice fading into a whisper meant only for her. "You can stay forever." For a moment, Kira felt the world stop. The ruins, the war, the smoke, all of it vanished in those words. She clung to him, her tears falling freely. His hand grew still, but his words stayed alive in her heart. Above, the battle raged on. But in the broken chamber, a child sat with her protector, no longer alone. And for the first time since the war began, there was hope.